This is the skirt you can wear to different events, to the church as a good girl, or to brunch with a sexy bodysuit. So in this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make this beautiful gathered skirt but in a different way. Hi ladies, I'm back now for good. I've missed you all so much. Let's dive into this tutorial. For this tutorial, you'll be needing some fabric about 3 yards or more because it's a gathered skirt. You'll also be needing some lining about 2 yards. You also need some elastic. It's the small size that I'm using here. And then the usuals, measuring tapes, scissors, tailor's chalk, some pins, seam ripper, and your sewing machine, of course. Also, you'll need some bias tape for the waistband area. For the bias tape, I'm using like a 1-inch bias tape. It makes it easier to sew when we're attaching this to our waistband. But if you have the normal one, the 1/2 inch, that's totally fine as well. First of all, I'll show you how to take your measurements for the skirt. And what I like to do is to use a rope, in this case to tie around the waist. This helps to give you an accurate measurement when taking your measurement, okay? So you want to tie some bias tape or whatever rope you're using around the smallest part of your waist, just in case you have a bit of belly, then you just want to try to locate the middle of your waist. Make sure it's tied tightly, and then you get your measurement tape and you measure around that place you just tied. When measuring, I like to put one finger inside my measuring tape, usually my thumb, and I put that in just for ease. Note down your waist figure, and next I'm going to measure my hips. Make sure that the tape goes round your bum. Once again, I put my thumb inside the tape while measuring. You can see that the tape goes around my bum, and I make sure that it's fitted. Note down your hips figure. Next is to get our skirt length measurements. Now for me, I have a mirror in front of me. If you don't have anyone to take your measurements, I suggest that you have a mirror that you can use to see what you're doing, okay? But if you have someone to take the measurement for you, fine. Another thing is when taking your length measurement, you don't want to bend down when taking it, else you mix up the figure. So stand straight and keep stepping on the measuring tape until it's tight all the way. Note down your desired length by looking at the mirror. I wanted it to just be a bit above my ankle because I want my ankle bracelet to show. Once you're done with that, we're done. You have your waist, hips, and skirt length measurements. I forgot to add that you also need your knee measurement. That's what the lining is for. For me, I took this measurement off camera, so you want to take that measurement just above your knee, okay? And that's about it. Now let's head on to our calculations. Okay, so the first is the skirt piece. We're going to be cutting out 2 pieces for this, front and back. So fabric width will be half your waist figure plus 40 inches. Now this 40 inches you can reduce depending on the quantity of your fabric or the fullness that you want. And you can increase it as well. But the more you increase it, the fuller it's going to be, okay? My skirt looked full at the beginning of this video, so 40 inches is really okay. And then for the desired length, subtract 2 inches from the skirt length that you measured, and then add 3 inches for hem allowance. And then you cut out 2 pieces. Then for the lining, it's half your waist figure plus 25 inches. We don't want to have a lot of bulk inside the skirt with the lining, and so the lining is not going to be as wide as the fabric piece, okay? Then for the length, use your knee length figure. For the hem, usually I like to use the finished edge of the lining, so no need to add hem allowance. Anywho, that's it, and then you cut out 2 pieces for the lining. For the waistband, it's 1 piece of fabric, and it's going to be your waist figure plus 15 inches, okay? That's how wide the waistband will be because it's elastic, so it has to be able to pass through your hips. If the calculation of your waist plus 15 inches is still less than your hips figure, then you want to add some more to that 15 inches. If the calculation is more than your hips figure, then you're good to go, okay? And then the length of the waistband is 5.5 inches. By the time we fold the waistband into 2, it gets to be about 2 1/4 inches. So that's more than enough for our elastic casings. We're going to be having 3 elastic casings. So you've got 1 piece for the waistband. And once you have all of this calculation done, the next step is to cut out our fabric. Get out your fabric and lay it flat. Spread it out because it's really a wide piece we're going to be cutting. I'm going to first of all measure the width, that is the waist, and then we'll measure the length later. Once I measure the width of my skirt piece, I'll fold the fabric into 2 because we need 2 skirt pieces. I'm just going to flip the fabric the other way around because it's easier for me to navigate. Next, I have my skirt waist calculation measured and marked, and then I cut out so that the extra fabric does not disturb me. And once I have this done, the next step is now to measure the length. From the top edge of the fabric, I'll measure to my skirt length calculated figure. Okay, measure and mark across. And then use my ruler to rule across and then cut out. After cutting out, I'm just going to slash through the side because remember it's on fold. I'll keep this aside once we're done. The next is the lining. So lay it all flat and then measure the lining waist. After measuring, fold into two equally and then I'll just rest a bit. Next, measure the lining length. Now, like I said before, for the lining, I'm going to use the selvage as my hem. Then measure and mark lining length. When done, cut out and then slash the side. So we have two lining pieces. What's left now is the waistband. For this, because it's going to be a really long waistband, I'm just going to fold the fabric piece into two so that we can measure at once. What I'll measure now is my calculation for the waistband divided by 2 because it's on fold. So please don't get confused because we are not slashing through for the waistband, okay? Measure and mark a bit downwards and then measure the length of the waistband all the way across and then cut out. This is the full waistband piece. Now let's make a pocket pattern. This is a side seam pocket. If you know how to do this, you can skip this part. Just take a piece of paper and then place your hand like you're putting it inside a pocket, going downwards, and then just use a pencil to draw. So it's going to be like a slopey kind of shape. Draw from the top and then from the bottom. You want to have a bit of depth at the bottom so that whatever it is you put inside your pocket will not fall out. Mine is a bit too deep, so I'm just going to reduce it a bit, and then you want to add your 1/2 inch sewing allowance. Looking good. Next thing is to cut the pattern. Please make sure you're using scissors that you don't use for your fabric. This is how mine looks after cutting. You can see that the edge of it is a straight line. Once you're done, get your remaining fabric pieces. I folded mine 4 times. And place the pocket pattern to see how best to cut it out. Once you make up your mind, so I'll just pin mine there because the edges are not so equal, okay? And then after pinning, cut out. Write on the pattern, cut 4 pieces so that you don't forget next time. So I cut mine out and then I have my 4 pieces and that's 2 pairs, okay? Time to attach the pockets. So I've laid out my skirt pieces. You can see the wrong side facing me and then the right side is facing inwards. Take out one of the fabric pieces because the pockets will be attached on the right side of fabric. I'm taking out a pair and then from the top of my fabric, I measure 2 inches downwards and that's where the pocket piece will start from. And then I pin it. Repeat the same thing for the other side of the fabric with the second pocket piece. From the top, measure and mark, and then pin the pocket, making sure that it's straight. That's how they should look. When we're done sewing, we'll flip them out and complete sewing. I'll show you that later. Next, move to the other side of the skirt pieces. Measure once again 2 inches downwards. It can be less if you want, but 2 inches is fine for me. and then take the right side of the pocket piece facing the right side of the fabric and then pin the other one, and then let's head to the sewing machine. We'll sew using 1/2 inch from the top of the pocket piece where we pin this to the bottom of the pocket piece where it ends, 1/2 inch. Do that for all the 4 sides of the skirt pieces. Now, once we're done with that, the next thing is you want to take this and iron it. Listen, ironing makes all the difference. You can decide to skip this part, but ironing, trust me, it makes all the difference, okay? So we iron every side of the pocket piece, and once we're done with that, the next step is to place the sides together. Place them together with right sides of fabric facing inwards, and you can see our pocket is placed outwards with the right sides of the pocket piece facing themselves inwards. And then pin the pocket pieces. That's the curved area, and pin all the way down. After pinning, you want to measure 1 inch from the top of the skirt waist from the side. Keep marking 1 inch going down, and then when you get to where the pocket begins, measure 1/2 inch round the pocket piece curve, because soon we're going to be sewing around the pocket piece, and then come back to the straight side of the skirt pieces. So let me explain again. After measuring 1 inch, you go downwards just below the pocket piece. You mark 1/2 inch round. You can see my marking. And then when you get back to the straight side, measure and mark 1 inch down on the side till you get to the end of the pocket piece, and then measure and mark to the end of the skirt piece, okay? You don't really need to mark it if you have a seam guide on your sewing machine, but if you're a beginner and you believe you need this mark, you do it, okay? I do it sometimes and I'm not a beginner. Okay, you can see mine is just to show you. Repeat the same for the other side, and then let's head to the sewing machine. We'll begin sewing 1 inch, and then when you get to that mark that changes to the 1/2 inch mark, you change direction and sew the 1/2 inch round, okay, round the curve. And then come back to the skirt sides and sew on the 1 inch mark all the way downwards. It's really easy and really simple. And this is how it looks. Really, really nice. Let me turn it around so you can see how my hands look inside. I love it. And then once again, iron. Iron the seams, fold it back and iron again. You see how it looks really neat. When you're done for this part, you want to repeat the same thing for the other side, okay? And then once we're done with this, we have our skirt sides sewn. If you have a serger at this point, you can serge the seams you have on the inside, okay? The next step is to sew basting stitches on our waist, and we'll be sewing basting stitches separately for the front side and then for the back side. That's the waist, the front waist and the back waist, okay? So adjust your tension knob to make it loose and your stitch length also to the highest. Once you adjust yours, sew at the top of your skirt waist, okay? Use 1/4 inch when sewing the stitches one at a time. We're sewing round the waist and it's really wide, okay? So be sure to check the back as you sew, just to be sure it's okay. And also slow down as you sew, because if you make a mistake, you have to start afresh, my sister. If you have a gathering foot, good for you. You can use it. Some people also use hand stitches to sew and gather. I have a gathering foot, but it doesn't quite work well for this machine of mine. I don't know why. Anyway, we're sewing 2 stitches round. I'm done with mine here. The next thing is to pick your threads from one side and start drawing the gathers, and after a while you go to the other side. Pick the threads and draw the gathers. Please be careful because if it snaps, you're in trouble. You have to do everything afresh. Now, I really want you to pay attention here. When we're gathering the skirt waist, we're not gathering it to our actual waist figure, okay? No. In order not to put a lot of tension on the elastic when we put it, we're gathering the waist to the figure of our calculation for the waistband. That is your waist plus 15 inches. So we'll gather half of that figure for the front skirt waist, okay? That's the front skirt piece. And then the remaining half figure for the back waist of the skirt, the back skirt piece. My waistband calculation is 45 inches. So that means my front gathers is going to be about 22.5 inches. And then the back is going to be the same. So of course the total is my that of my waistband calculation, which is 45 inches. I hope you understand, okay? Yeah, so I'm going to keep drawing my gathers until I get to that half of waistband calculation figure for each side. And so we keep drawing the gathers. And then once we're sure that you've got properly drawn, the next thing is to adjust your sewing machine back to the right figures for the tension and your stitch length, okay? Next is to sew on the gathers to secure them, sewing using normal stitches, okay? So that when we are adding our lining, it doesn't keep shifting. Can be quite tricky, but don't give up. Just keep at it, and at the end, even after securing it, it may be a bit excess or a bit smaller than the waistband calculation figure. But when we're adding our waistband, we can always squeeze in the excess or draw it out a bit if you have, if it's too small. So you have nothing to worry about. Just use one stitch and sew around the front waist. And once we're done, this is how it looks. Do the same thing for the other side of the waist, okay? Definitely bigger than our true waist so it can freely move past our hips even after attaching the waistband with the elastic. So we keep that aside, and then for the lining, first of all, remember that we slashed it through just to give it some structure. So using 1/2 inch, we're going to be sewing the side, and then once again, you iron. Next is to pleat the waist area. Fold the lining to get the midpoint of the lining, then mark it. Time to pleat. The pleats can be facing one direction. It's totally up to you. I'm using small pleats here. And then keep measuring just to be sure that it gets to be the same figure as my waistband figure. Okay, that is my waistband figure divided into two to get the figure for the front side of the lining. That's, front and back pieces. That's what I mean. The front lining and then the other side of the lining, the back lining. Okay, so keep pleating, keep measuring as you pleat so that you do not over pleat the waist. Okay, that's the waistband figure. Once done, we'll head to the sewing machine to secure the pleats with a stitch. And we're using pleats just to be able to reduce bulk at the skirt waist, okay? That's why we're not gathering the lining. Once done, your skirt pieces, both lining and fabric, are ready to be attached together. Now flip your main fabric to the wrong side and then flip your lining in a way that the right side is facing you and the wrong side is facing inwards, okay? So that means that the seams are covering each other. You don't get to see the seams. So you can see how I pinned them together, and they should naturally align. If any part is in excess, you can just squeeze it in. Once done, we head to the sewing machine and we sew using 1/4 inch because we're going to be attaching our waistband shortly and we don't want these seams to be showing. So 1/4 inch is totally fine to attach both lining and the fabric pieces. Next is to construct our waistband. We just have one side to join together, so We're going to pin that and use 1/2 inch to sew that, okay? Next, separate the seams and have that ironed so it looks good. Then fold the waistband equally and iron as you fold. It's very important to iron. Next, take your bias binding tape and measure around the waistband and add a bit more and then cut out. We'll use this bias tape to finish one edge of our waistband. Now, this is not compulsory. You can attach a waistband like this and fold it inwards on the inside of the skirt. But this method just gives it some kind of pizzazz. So I like to finish most of my waistbands this way. Take this to the sewing machine and I'm using like 1 inch, a 1 inch bias binding tape. So it's really big and I'm able to fold it easily. If you have the smaller one, you can use it, but if it's going to stress you, you can make your own bias binding tape or, skip this step and just fold it later on as you sew. Start sewing at the edge of the bias tape and sew all the way till almost the end. When you approach the end, fold the edge of the bias tape so that there is no raw edge and then finish sewing. You're done. It should look like this, really, really nice. Then you bring your skirt piece. Now your skirt piece is one because the lining has been attached. Fold the waistband into two because remember there is no second seam on it. So let's mark the other side that is folded so that we'll know that this is the other side of the waistband. Then take it to the skirt waist and look for the seam and then take the waistband and place the other part that has a side seam on one side of the skirt waist seam and then pin round. This is just to make sure that the waist is distributed evenly into the waistband. Then we head back to the sewing machine and sew using 1/2 inch all around. Remember to remove your pins as you sew. After sewing, looking good. I love it, I love it, I love it. So let me show you what it looks like right now. We're not done yet because I tucked the waistband inside. Anywho, back to the sewing machine. Now you can see how it looks on the inside because we already folded and ironed it. It's easier to place inwards to cover the waist of our skirt on the inside. We'll take this to the sewing machine and we'll sew just at the edge of the waistband or just underneath the waistband. Okay, before we begin sewing, please check the waist for any seams showing from the gathers. Then use your seam ripper to loosen all that part out. We'll be leaving about 2 inches of space open for us to be able to insert our elastic inside soon. Measure and mark that boldly from one of the skirt waist seams. Don't forget or else you will have to loosen some seams to get the space needed for the elastic. You can pin just at the waistband edge so it makes it easier because this waistband has a way of folding somehow if you don't pin them in place. So I'm just going to pin round just to be sure. Then sew the waistband edge bit by bit until you get to the 2 inch mark and stop. Remember that our waistband is still bigger than our waist. This is our waist plus 15 inches until we add our elastic. Looking good. That's the 2 inch hole we left open. Next is to create elastic casings for the elastic. I use my chalk to mark from the 2 inch mark all the way up so I don't forget and sew round because we still need that place open. Then measure the width of your elastic. Mine is less than 1/2 inch, so I'll be measuring and marking 5/8 of an inch. That's the mark just after 1/2 inch on your measuring tape. So measure and mark 5/8 of an inch 3 times on your waistband, okay? Measure and mark the first 5/8, and then I measure the second, and then the third is there. This will enable the elastic enter freely. Just make sure that whatever your measurement is, it should be marked equally on the waistband. Next, measure and mark your 5/8 all round until you get to the long 2-inch stop mark to be able to fix in the elastic and then close up the space later on. So I'll just measure and mark all the way and then round until I get to that spot. And when I get there, I stop, okay? Once done marking, we head to our sewing machine to sew on those marks as they will become our elastic casings. Keep sewing round until you get to where that mark ends. That's our 2-inch mark on the waistband. And then you want to repeat the same step for the second casing. You start sewing, and of course you remember to stop at the 2-inch mark so that we have our opening to be able to fix in our elastic. Once done, next thing is to measure your elastic. Your elastic should be your waist measurement. Please do not underestimate this elastic because it has a lot of elasticity in it, unlike the bigger ones. So if you want your waist to look snatched, don't add any allowance to the elastic figure, okay? So measure your waist figure and cut out, and then measure again using the elastic you just cut out to cut out 2 more. So you'll be having 3 cut out elastics. And then we'll insert them one by one, starting with the topmost casing. Use a safety pin to insert the elastic into the top casing, and then go round till you get to the other side. Keep watching the tail of your elastic, that's the end of your elastic, so that you don't lose it. You can pin it to the fabric so it doesn't snap inside the waist. When the elastic finally comes out at the other end, ensure it's not twisted on the inside, and also look at the direction that it comes out, making sure that everything is flat. Then take both of them and place one on top of the other, and then sew on them in a crisscross kind of manner, okay? Like an X, yeah. And to really secure them, you can use straight or zigzag stitches for this. Afterwards, fix it in well, and then rinse and repeat the same process for the other 2 elastic casings. Once you're done, this is how it looks. I love it, I love it, I love it. There's nothing left to do at the waist except to close the 2-inch opening that we used to insert the elastic. Back to the sewing machine. Ensure that the elastics are not in your way as you are sewing to cover up the 2-inch space. Shift the elastic as you sew on the casing line. Do that for the first casing and then the other casing. Once done with that, you're good to go. The waistband looks really good. I love it. What's left now is for us to finish the hemline. For the hemline, remember we added 3 inches as hemline allowance. So let's measure and mark that figure round, and then fold from the marks and iron. It looks really good once you're done ironing. Then from the edge, fold in 1/2 inch from the 3 inches and iron round. It makes our sewing easier. Back to the sewing machine. Ensure that your thread color complements your fabric. Sew round to the end. Then you come to the waist part, iron softly on the elastic waist. It kind of softens the elastic just a little bit so it relaxes on your body when worn. And we're done. Yes, this is how mine looks. My ankle bracelet is showing, very important to me. The pockets, the fullness. At least I have a church dress now. This is how it looks. So please, when you're done, I want to see yours. I'd love to see yours. Tag me on Instagram, drop a comment. Don't forget to follow my new page on Instagram. It's the same name, So Wonderful, So_wonderful with double L, but it's a new page. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching and engaging. I appreciate you all. All right, ladies, I'll see you in the next video.